Friends and enemies, welcome to Bad Voltage Season 3, Episode 59. I'm Stuart Langridge.
Wow.
I'm here with my comrades, John O'Bacon. We didn't...
we talked about it before he came on.
We did, and then we didn't actually pick a name. And Jeremy Garcia, coming to you live from all the places on Earth currently devastated by climate change
that's just Earth at this point, but sure.
It's a breezy start.
I tell you, in the UK, it is now hot enough that people's iPhones are failing because they're getting too hot. Mine, it's happened to. Popey's, it's happened to. Bunch of other people on Mastodon.
It's when you leave it in the is that when you leave it in the sun and it basically says sorry, too hot, and it refuses to work?
Sometimes it happens to me in my pocket. Charlie, Charlie asked if I had unusually hot thighs, which I don't think I have, but I'm probably not the one to ask. And
he does, ladies. He does.
And it's just, Apple are in California, right? You think they know about hot temperatures. And half of New York is under a black cloud of smog. and California is just California all of the time. It's all terrible.
California is great
not the intro you deserve, dear listeners.
We've got a nice temperature right now. So go fuck with you guys.
Okay.
With your
also
stupid
good to know
places
that
you live.
when I'm a couple minutes late to a recording, the topic of conversation is in fact me.
It's always about you, Jeremy.
It is always you.
I've learned a thing today.
So, shall we actually do a show now? Got past all that. The thing I wanted to talk about was, and this is a topic we've dabbled with a few times over Bad Vulture's life, and we did on previous podcasts in the past. If you go back 15 years or so, the vibe was very much the internet is ad supported, right? That was the way of the future. The way you built things was you did user-generated stuff, something freemium, and it was ad-supported, and that seemed to be the way. But as far as I can tell, there seems to be, at least in some ways, the needle is swinging away from that quite a bit. Now, there's a whole bunch of reasons that could be caused. So ad blockers are a lot more mainstream than they were in the old days. And people discovered that ads don't actually pay very much to most people. And there's a whole vicious circle there where ads don't pay very much and people are blocking them.
What do you mean by ads don't pay very much?
I was going to say, I don't know that I agree with any of this.
Oh, okay. No, well, this is fair. So we'll get into this whole discussion. My point was, it certainly feels to me like there's a bit of a swing back towards people actually paying for things. So Patreon's quite popular now. People are doing it on Substack and there's routinely a charge things for it. Every podcast who isn't us has sponsor slots. Newspapers increasingly have paywalls and are being successful at them. We've seen that. We talked about that with the New York Times is now making more money from subscriptions than it is from ads. So it felt to me like that's a change, but maybe you don't agree that that's a change at all. Maybe things are still ad supported, and the rise of subscription payments is a flash in the pan. What do you think?
So I definitely don't think the rise in subscription payments is a flash in the pan, but I was just confused by the ads don't make a lot of money, given that companies, even that we don't consider ad companies, let's take Amazon as a great example, are going to close in on $50 billion in ad sales this year. So that seems like a reasonable amount of money to me for something that is not in their top two businesses. So I think ads are clearly a viable business. They are, they survived going from print to newspaper, from more traditional print to newspaper to radio to TV to internet. So I think as a business, it's clear ads are viable.
Yeah, they work. Yeah.
Yeah. Whether we agree with them philosophically, I guess, is a very personal decision. But
sure.
Is it a relevant and durable business model? I think we can probably come to the conclusion, yes.
You see, I don't know. So my two very recent counterexamples are both Twitter and Reddit, both of whom are attempting to pivot to a less ad-driven, more subscription-driven model.
So I think then I have a much different assessment of what your question is. Did Reddit and Twitter raise too much money and have a valuation that is not justified by the businesses that they have? In both cases, yeah, totally, 100%. They don't have an ad business problem. They have a business model problem. Like if you look at Reddit, what they raised $1.4 or $5 billion over 10 rounds. I think at the last round they raised was like a Series F at a $10 billion pre-money valuation. Should they be worth $10 billion given what they do? No, absolutely not. They never should have. But that's a zero interest rate, incentivized weird behaviors and wild valuations that are not justified problem, not an ads problem.
I would also say that I don't think that they're moving away from the ad model as much. I mean, just look at Twitter. I mean, Musk has brought in what's her name? Linda Yakitori, or whatever her name is.
The new CEO.
From
Yakarino, I think, isn't it?
Yakarino.
I don't believe there are any charcoal grills involved.
I love charcoal grills. But she's an NBC advertising executive, and he was speaking at an event that she was facilitating a while back about the advertising business. But I think what they are doing is they're trying to find. I mean, I think what you're referring to, Ak, is the charging for API access and things like that, right? I mean, I think they're identifying that where are the places where they can reasonably charge, right? Yep. And they're gonna and it sounds like both of them, especially Reddit, has kind of, without turning this into API pricing, has kind of got the pricing model wrong right out the gate. I think that will change and adapt based upon how they figure out how to sell their API access. I don't think there's anything intrinsically wrong with that personally, but I don't think they're moving away from ads. I think one of the things that I'm encouraged by with some of the things that Elon Musk has talked about is that his view, and I completely agree with him on this, is that when an ad is high quality, very relevant to you, it's content and it's valuable. But when it's irrelevant to you and it's not of interest to you, it's just noise. And that to me there's a certain irony in Elon Musk saying that, which is right, and then the reality of the Twitter advertising platform, which is not good.
which is kind of the point. You go, here is a picture of what a world with genuinely relevant ads could be. You basically wouldn't even know they're ads, just like television programs. You're like, yeah, but that's not the world we actually live in. It's not the world you're delivering.
I think it depends on where you are, because Instagram ads are very good in many cases, and Facebook ads. I know a lot of people. Erica, obviously both of you know her. She's my wife. She has repeatedly said that the ads that she sees on Facebook, she's bought tons of stuff from ads on Facebook. It's very tightly relevant to her. I think it depends on where you are. Ads on Twitter tend to be a bit shit. Ads on LinkedIn, on Reddit tend to be a bit shit. I
think one thing for me, because you did raise, some companies going to paywalls. If you look at the companies that I think are executing the best in this regard, I'll use the Times as an example. That some of their content is definitely paywalled, but they are also pretty aggressively escalating their ad business at the same time in a hybrid model and tuning that knob where it makes sense. So if you look at their revenue in 2022, they made about $1.5 billion in subscriptions, but over $500 million in ad revenue, and then a bunch of money in some other stuff that are less relevant to the discussion. But when you look at when they bought The Athletic, who was subscription only and didn't take advertising, one of the first things they did was add advertising, with the acknowledgement of if they wanted to recoup that investment, it had to be partially that it's going to boost their subscription numbers, but partially there's a great segment of people to advertise to, because they're giving high signal, because they care about a very specific topic. So I think increasingly the companies that do it well, given that there's been a huge change in the ad market, right? Like ATT was a foundational shift in what was allowed in the advertising market.
What's that?
The Apple app tracking transparency change.
Yes.
That foundationally changed what most third-party advertisers were able to do in a way that changed the game. So if you look at who's going to, in a, I guess, slightly more privacy respecting world, who's going to do well, it's going to be first parties that have interesting data. But that's realistically, in my opinion, probably better for everyone, right? Like the ad market before was mad shady.
Yeah. And I think that's part of the thing. That was what I meant about the vicious circle, that as people start to attempt to avoid ads, they get more invasive, more grabby, more attention grabbing, more overt. And then that makes it worse, right? You get a death spiral at that point. It makes people want to avoid them even more, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And leaving aside, as you said, leaving aside the morality of the ad business as a whole, which is not what we're talking about, the thing that I thought was interesting then is that I've increasingly seen the rise of subscription stuff. Well, it's not like, people invented the idea of paying for subscriptions for things in 2014, but it seems to be more popular now than it was. But what you're suggesting is that that's an additional revenue stream for a lot of people rather than a replacement revenue stream. Is that reasonable?
For those that are doing it well, yes, I think it will be incremental revenue, not the. But I think, to be fair, there are some companies that will continue to be mostly, if not solely, mostly ad-based companies, and that's fine. I'm glad that the online advertising specifically is heading in a direction that is more privacy respecting, and I imagine we'll all agree there. If anything, some of us might think they went far enough, or other companies should go further, not just Apple. But
everyone should go further the whole time. But again, part of the thing I was thinking about was there seems to be a change for what you might call smaller creators, right? Where the ad model wasn't really suitable. It only works at volume, right? If you are a podcast, just having a sort of generic adverts, or if you are doing, if you're a YouTuber, it doesn't pay enough to just live on the ad revenue unless you're Mr. Beast or something, right?
Well, I think it depends, because I think it's important for us to. Well, a couple of thoughts. One is, I think there is a difference between traditional like direct response ads where you run an ad and you're tracking conversions, and then there's brand advertising, right? So I would actually say that I'll give you an example. There's a small YouTube channel called VR Flight Sim Guy, and he literally specializes in Microsoft Flight Simulator and other flight sims inside of VR headsets, and he reviews headsets, and he's got a really cool channel. He's got like 25,000 followers, so not massive, but very specialist. And he, as a sponsor for his channel, is sponsored by this company called VR Rock, and they basically make prescription lenses for different VR headsets. So in that situation, that's probably a great avenue for a little company like VR Rock, and it's a great opportunity for him because they're very specialist, right? Like, if you only care about prescription lenses for VR headsets if you're into VR, by definition.
Yeah.
And if you're into VR, you probably watch. If you're interested in flight sims and VR, you're probably watching his channel. So I think in those brand situations, that would work out well. But to your point, like, one of the reasons why so many of the more homegrown advertising networks, like, for example, when I launched Baron Carter, I ran some ads on Metal Injection, which is a metal website. And it was worthless because they didn't have particularly good targeting. There wasn't anywhere near enough people going to that website. So that's one of the reasons why the behemoths like Google ads and Facebook ads and LinkedIn ads work, right? Because they've got varying levels of targeting and they've got massive numbers of people going there. So I think advertising comes in different forms. If you want to just raise awareness of your brand, sponsoring YouTube channels or newsletters or Substacks or whatever, I think is actually a good avenue for people, and it's a form of advertising.
So that, I think, and I hadn't walked this through in my head until you just said that, but if you're watching a YouTube video and there's a company who is sponsoring the channel, and the person doing the channel is talking about their product because they actually care about it, and they've received money to advertise that product, that is an ad, sure. But it seems qualitatively different to me than the pre-roll ad you got at the beginning that YouTube put there instead.
Yeah, because it's editorially determined, right? They probably wouldn't accept it.
They're both ads, but I wasn't really thinking about the sponsorship deal as being an ad in the same way, but they're still ads. I say I hadn't walked that thought to completion in my head until you said that.
They're both ads, but if they're good at the pre-roll ad and it is thematic with the show, isn't that still interesting content?
Yeah.
in theory, when did you last watch a pre-roll ad?
I have YouTube Premium, so I never see them.
Same.
Okay, so you're paying money to not watch them, both of you. I don't know. Tell me, what else do you get for premium that makes it worth it if it wasn't the ads? Would you pay for whatever it is you get if you still got the ads?
Jono looks it up.
You don't even know.
You can't background videos on Android if you don't pay for premium.
Okay,
Yeah,
no, that seems like an actual feature that would be useful.
Yeah.
Would you pay for that if you still got the ads?
I mean, the reason why we bought Premium, we have like a family subscription, is so Jack wouldn't see ads.
Sure, but I mean,
That was the main reason. Honestly,
That's a
if it
strong
wasn't,
signal right there, though, to be honest.
yeah. This is my point. It's difficult to make a swing that no. Pre-roll ads can be useful and thematically good and everything if you're paying money to avoid seeing them and to avoid exposing your child to them.
no, but but you know what it's like, right? I mean, Jeremy, you don't have a kid, but you've got like a niece, right? And Ak, you know what it's like having had a kid. I don't mind Jack seeing ads, as long as it's like it's not, dangerous or destructive, which wouldn't be accepted onto YouTube anyway. I just don't want weeks of wittering. Dad, I want this thing. I want this thing. Right?
That's fair.
That's what I don't want.
What? You mean he doesn't get ads the whole time about some app that lets you trade stocks, which is what I get the whole time on YouTube, and I can't make it go away.
It's only a matter of
Trade 151 or something. I don't know the name of it. But yeah, I mean, as I say, they do feel different to me, and I don't know whether it's now just more socially acceptable to say, sure, I do this and I'd like to get paid for it, please. That is a reasonable thing to ask for. That the model that Patreon either created or capitalized on or did well, depending on how you think of it, seems to be a pretty popular one, and especially for small creators for whom being ad supported isn't viable. You've now got individual sponsorship deals. You've got Patreon. You've got regular subscriptions. You've got people who 15 years ago would have just written a WordPress.com blog and now doing it on Substack with the expectation that you'll subscribe and maybe pay for the premium stuff.
Yeah, you know what I'd love to find out? I don't know if this data is available. I'd love to find out what the average amount of revenue a Substack brings in.
I could not find a number. I did look. Because I thought that would be a very relevant number to have bandied around, wouldn't it? And I couldn't find it. What I found was a bunch of people guessing. And as far as I could tell, they did that guessing by throwing darts at a dartboard because none of the numbers were like anything else. It's ridiculous. It's like trying to find out how much a YouTube channel pays you, right?
And there's broad estimates around that. Like I was literally chatting to our kiddo about this. Mr. Beast apparently brings in between $10 and $50 million a year from his YouTube channel.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah. On the other hand, he's like, that's like,
he's the most he's like one of the most popular YouTubers in the world.
So. This is like saying Lionel Messi gets paid a lot of money for playing football. I mean, he does, but he's one of the 4 best people in the world at it, right?
Well, I can give you some data from my YouTube channel. If I look at the last,
you owned 0.
Are you ready? Are you ready for the? This is almost like Mr. Beast. By the way,
did you have to pay them $5?
Coming in right behind Mr. Beast is Mr. Bacon at how much?
So I have 6,544 subscribers. I don't really put YouTube videos up very often, and they get a hilariously small number of views. And in the last year, I brought in $815.
That's not bad.
Yeah, it's better than a smack in the face with a wet fish.
I mean, that ain't nothing. Again, it's not sustainable money, but it's money. You've got $800 you can spend on, a whole bunch of nice evenings out or whatever.
Spend it on Vimeo subscriptions.
Well, Daily Motion, yeah.
Daily Motion.
Do they still exist?
I don't know. No idea.
I know Vimeo exist.
Yes,
I use Vimeo.
Yeah. But I don't know about Daily Motion.
It's actually a great service. They do a good job.
They are the Pepsi of video networks, right? Probably actually better. No one cares. But
yeah, I mean the one thing I was going to say though is, and I know we don't want to get into the the ethics of ads, but one of the things that I think is challenging. One thing we should talk about is how different people use these advertising networks, because I think it impacts this conversation. Because I mentioned earlier on that Musk was met with like the advertising council or whatever it was, and there's companies like Disney and Unilever and like these massive companies who are spending tens of millions of dollars a year on advertising. To me, where I actually, and for those companies, I frankly don't care. Where I worry about advertising is, I think if for people who are running like small companies, they're just getting up and running. I think a lot of companies depend on advertising to drive traffic to their products and services. Whether you are selling something for a consumer like a teapot or a exercise band or whatever, or whether you're targeting a business audience, right? And my worry about we've talked about this within the context of ad blockers is, I think when advertising becomes less relevant, when it becomes just noise, it impacts all of those little businesses. So I think it's easy for us to kind of pin advertising as just being not just an unnecessarily like unfun element of the world, but I actually think it's an important tool for those businesses. But I shouldn't think this way, but I do. I care more about those businesses than I care about Unilever and Disney when it comes to advertising.
No, so first of all, I think that's reasonable. I find it difficult to be sympathetic on this, because this is what happens when you piss comprehensively in the well. It poisons the well, right? That's what happens. And
can we name the show "Piss Comprehensively in the Well"?
Comprehensively, just as
it's. What do you want from me? You didn't just make your bed, you made your bed and then made me watch 10,000 pre-roll ads about your bed. Now you have to lie in it.
But importantly, that's the network, right? You might have an individual advertiser who actually creates really great ads that are relevant and entertaining and informative, right?
Sure.
But if you've got, this is one of the reasons why I like what Musk said, like about ads, like if they are relevant and interesting. And one of the things that is interesting about Twitter, their community notes feature, where people can it's primarily being used for like fact checking. That applies to ads as well. And it's I heard about this, but I've not found examples of this yet. But there's been ads that have been run on Twitter where they've been community noted, which I think is brilliant for ads that make outlandish claims or whatever. And I wonder if that's going to become a model for some of these other advertising networks. Because some of the ads that you see are just outright just horse shit, right?
Sure.
Especially like get rich quick scheme type stuff. So,
but part of the problem there is saying, well, it's good when ads are relevant and interesting and well made, which is true, but everyone thinks, or at least claims, that their ad is that. That's not an objective test, which means that you've got to have someone whose job it is to work that out, at which point I stopped listening to Musk, because he used to have a team that did that sort of thing, and he fucking fired them all. But on a more general note, it is hard to say, yes, we want ads which are good, relevant to the audience, well made, not obtrusive, not privacy invading, because everyone claims to have that. Sure, everyone wants that.
I don't think people do, though. I think there are many advertisers out there, many who know that their ad is noisy and horseshit and is manipulative and is trying to use techniques of persuasion.
Sure.
And their justification is that's what you have to do to get seen.
But if you say...
I don't think everybody thinks
A/B tested it to that stage, actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
That state is not an accident. It's a...
I am 100% confident that they know they're doing it. The point is, if you say, I'm banning your ads because you do it, they'll go, we don't do that.
No, I'm not saying you ban those ads to do it.
You literally are saying that.
No. I'm not saying that whatsoever. What I'm saying, so this is Twitter's approach that they're pursuing. They're not there yet. Is that it just impacts the reach of the ad, right? So if an ad is deemed high quality, relevant, interesting, it will be seen by more people, which I think is the right model, right? If you create the incentive model,
what do you think a ban is?
That's not a ban. A ban is where you don't allow content on a platform.
Right. So I say to you, I say to all the restaurants, in the town you live in, we're going to allow high quality people in. And then it turns out every time you go in somewhere, they go, not for you. And you say, I've been bad. And they go, no, you haven't. We're just limiting your exposure. So you're allowed in once a week on a Thursday. That's the same thing.
This is the most fucking ridiculous comparison I've ever heard in any argument in 20.
That is just a bold claim.
That is a bold swing.
That is ridiculous. No, the point is that, and I think this is how it should work and this is how social media companies try to work, but that's a separate conversation about whether they're effective, which we know they're not.
Yeah.
You want a certain type of quality, right? And then that impacts the visibility. I'll give you an example. One of the things that's fairly well known in advertising circles is that if you create a piece of content that's actually informative, like a video, and put it out there, it will generally perform better than if you just create like an outright, go and buy my product, right? And to Jeremy's point earlier on, companies A/B test this stuff into the ground, right? So to me, like if you've got like a high quality piece of content on Twitter that people like, and let's say the metrics are people are watching the video all the way to the end, they're liking it, they're maybe even resharing it, right? To me, that should get a greater level of elevation than just, a 30-second outright bullshit kind of set of claims.
You are assuming that correlation is causation, though. The fact that something is high quality and is relevant to the audience, right? If people watch a thing to the end, it might indicate that, but it might not indicate that, and that's part of the problem. Right, the two things are not the same.
You can't guarantee, but I would argue if you take 100 people and you ask them to watch a 2-minute video, and 90 of those people watch the 2-minute video all the way to the end, I think we can make a reasonable conclusion that they found that video interesting.
Sure,
right?
but that's not at all the same thing you said.
How are we applying this to ads, though? Because ads are not displayed based on how engaging they are or how many people watch them to the end. They're based on how much the company sponsoring the ad is willing to pay.
No, 100%. But that's what I'm saying is that this is where, from everything I've learned so far about Twitter's strategy, this is what they're trying to change, is that they're like the traditional advertising model, to your point, Jeremy, is you basically target an audience, you pile loads of money in, and the more money you spend, the more people see it, right? From what I understand from what Twitter are designing for the next iteration of their advertising platform is that the quality and the engagement quality and the level of how much it's community noted will impact the reach of the ad, which I think is the right thing to do, because I think you'll get better quality ads.
So their entire business model be predicated on people creating good ads, or they won't accept their money?
No, I think that their point, and again, I'm basing this on what I've heard Musk say, right, which is relatively high level. His point is that, I mean, this is his whole like freedom of speech, freedom of reach, not freedom of speech, freedom of speech, not freedom of reach is one of those two. Basically, anything will be posted onto the platform that isn't hateful, right? And then, but for things that are low quality, won't get as much visibility. So if you put a shitty ad up, I think where they want to get to is if you put a shitty ad up there that's manipulative through the various mechanisms of engagement and community notes and other things, the signals will indicate it's a shitty ad, and therefore, even if you spend a bunch of money on it, won't get the reach. So you won't see the ad performing and converting. So what do all advertising agencies do? They'll explore other mechanisms to get it to convert, right? Which will trigger them putting up high quality content. Which I think is the right model.
So it will trigger them putting up more popular content, but that's not the same thing at all as high quality.
It doesn't have to be popular, because it could be a lot of ads and very niche ads.
But your metric is, did people watch it all the way to the end?
No. I'm not saying this is how it's going to work. This is how I'm saying I imagine they might try and do this. But if you put a video ad up, right? If we look at the things where we can evaluate the success of that, right? There is 1, is there a conversion event? 2, if it's an engagement ad, are people liking it and resharing it? 3, what is the proportion of the video being consumed, right? Those are the basic metrics that you can evaluate an ad on. Now, if you want to evaluate quality, right? Conversion events Absolutely. Did that ad convert? But that's more difficult to do with the changes that have been made to iOS and elsewhere for reasonable reasons.
Yep.
So if we're therefore looking at engagement, which they can track, is a lot of people will just like a fucking ad, right? This is one of the reasons why a lot of people who run ads on the internet will exclude countries like Myanmar and India and places like that, because you just get click farms of people you can put an ad up on Facebook and target, I think it's like Pakistan and India, and you'll get like 1,000 likes on that ad within less than 10 minutes. It's ridiculous, right? So a lot of people exclude those countries because that's not an adequate metric of success. So therefore, if you look at success with a video ad, arguably the only real thing that you can identify there is going to be people watching to the end of the video. But then if you layer on top of that on Twitter, community notes, where if there's manipulative bullshit in there and it gets community noted, then that's an additional layer of insight that you have in that ad that can impact how much reach it gets.
See, I think this is wildly untrue, because if I want people to watch to the end of the ad, what I'll do is I'll have the Tom Holland umbrella video, and at the end I'll say, buy my fucking cars. There you go, done. Right?
I don't think that'll work consistently, though.
No,
remember,
I agree.
That just won't work consistently.
You understand the point I'm making, though, right?
No,
because if
I don't understand the point you're making.
If people wanted to watch high-quality stuff the whole time, the most popular thing on television wouldn't be America's Funniest Botched Cosmetic Surgeries or whatever the hell it is. It would be that Morgan Freeman documentary about penguins, and it isn't.
No, but the point
I think you're
is
mapping your definition of quality on the rest of the populace, aren't you?
Yeah.
But if everyone has an individual definition of quality, then there is no definition, which is we want high-quality ads, because someone always thinks they are.
No, but the quality is defined within the audience that you're targeting, right?
Yes.
So the America's Botched, show, right, is targeting a general populace. That's the reason why, like, America's Got Talent and Britain's Got Talent and those kinds of shows are successful, because they target a general consumer. If you're a business and you are selling Salesforce, right, then popular as shit is not going to work for you. You're going to need to find out what works for that target audience. That's the point. In the same way that the reason why YouTube is so successful is because people go down the fucking rabbit hole with different topics, like VR flight sim guy, right?
Yeah.
Like, his videos are very, very popular to the 25,000 people who are into Microsoft Flight Simulator who wear a VR headset.
But that's why the algorithm is interesting, because it will suggest, I suspect, wildly different things to the three of us, but it will find things that all three of us individually think are interesting. That's the whole point.
Yeah. Yeah. And the reason why I think, going back to Twitter, the community notes thing is especially interesting is that the way community notes is designed, I don't know how well it works, is that the consensus around a note only applies for people who, based upon the data they've got on the platform, have very different perspectives and opinions. So, for example, Tucker Carlson started uploading videos to Twitter. There'll only be a clarification on that note if liberals and conservatives both agree that there is misinformation in that video.
Kind of defeats the purpose of disinformation, though, doesn't it?
What the hell?
But the point is that
so
the
you're
way
allowed
that,
to upload flat Earth videos because some flat Earthers will go, no, that's absolutely fine. And so there's two sides to it, and the two sides don't agree that it's wrong.
No. Listen to what I'm saying, right? The point is that if community notes only operated where it was based upon volume of people saying this thing is untrue, right, then people could brigade it, right? I think we'd all agree with that, right? So the way in which it's designed is that the idea is that people from a multitude of different perspectives can all say...
You're just inverting the brigading, though.
Yes.
In what way?
The people who...
People who like a thing don't comment on it, and therefore it doesn't get blocked. Like I say, if you've got enough flat earthers, then you should be able to post flat earth videos according to that. Because no matter how many people go, flat earth is all bollocks, a bunch of people are going to go, no, it isn't. So it's fine. That's like Jeremy says, that's just inverse brigading.
Hang on, I'm missing something here. I don't get what you guys are saying.
Jeremy.
I don't know that I could think of another way to explain it.
Yeah. So your pitch is, right, I upload a flat earth video. And what
you should do that, by the way.
And what should happen for it to be recognised as being wrong is that flat Earth people and non-flat Earth people agree that it's wrong. Is that correct?
Well, not necessarily in that granular way of looking at it, right? And again, I don't know the specifics of how this operates. They should open source the algorithm for this. But I don't know if it's specific to the topic. It's just people who, from what I understand, it's basically people with a varying set of views across a multitude of different topics. When there is consensus around, or some level of consensus around those different viewpoints, that's when something gets community noted. Now, the true test of this, and we obviously don't want to turn this into a show about community notes, is actually Tucker Carlson, is since he started uploading videos, is because he spews a lot of bullshit. What is the speed to a clarification appearing under one of those videos? And right now, it's not fast.
But this is exactly the point. You're saying he spews a lot of bullshit, but a load of people think he doesn't, and therefore it never gets noted.
Right.
This is
my point. Curious to see it in action. I thought that was the algorithm and philosophy they were using towards engagement of organic content. I did not know they were also trying to apply it to ads, to be honest.
So community notes definitely can be applied to ads. But what I'm curious to see is, again, along the lines of Musk's views of like ads should be content, which frankly, I would argue, I don't use Instagram very much, but the ads that I've seen on Instagram have been tightly relevant to what I'm interested in. And I've seen it on two different accounts. I've seen it in Baron Carter with my music and with my personal account. I get like really relevant shit in both of those accounts because of who I'm following.
I would be really interested to see how extensive Instagram users feel about that, because I don't know enough about it at all. I think I have an Instagram account, but a lot of people in like the art world use it a lot, and I'd be interested to hear what they say about the advertising, both as a potential ad buyer and also as an ad receiver. I don't want to say consumer, an ad receiver.
Yeah. My ads are usually pretty relevant on Instagram. The one thing I have noticed that has changed more recently, and I'm guessing this is a result of some of the ATT rollouts, is I used to, if I searched for anything on the internet and then purchased it, I would forever get ads about it on Instagram, even though I had in fact already purchased it. Yeah. That seems to have lessened recently.
Oh, look, I said the word shoes out loud now for the next 8 months. Yeah. Every webpage I go to is going to have 12 different pictures of shoes and a little pop-up thing.
Exactly.
Like, pack it in.
There needs to be a universal button of I have acquired said thing. Stop.
Yeah. Like,
stop bugging me.
I'm fully on board with hearing about it. I heard what you were saying. I went and did it. Now shut up. Otherwise, I'm going to give them back.
It's like a Slack notification. You need a snooze. Like shoes usually last me this long. I'll talk to you again in 6 months.
Oh my God. The worst experience I had of that was I was learning how to like do YouTube, and there's this guy who is an expert in YouTube advertising. And he had these really cheesy pictures where like the classic kind of like he's got like a suit on, and he's got his arm up. And is deliberately showing off his Rolex like one of those people.
No.
It's so cringeworthy. And I watched like one of his videos, or like two of his videos on his YouTube channel, and they were pretty good videos.
Okay.
But oh my God.
Above the bit where he had to pose to wear his watch.
That guy followed me around on the internet for weeks. Like, because he calls it like the omnipresent advertising thing, which is basically fucking advertise everywhere. Yeah. So he was advertising on like Twitter and Instagram and Google ads. He must have spent a fortune on those ads. And it must work because he's not running them if they're not working.
He's not. Is he still running them, or did he run them until the money ran out and then he stopped doing that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, because those kinds of people, when they say when they talk about their businesses, you just don't know how true it is, right? But I actually emailed.
In fact, I would go further and say you do know that it isn't true. There's like an inverse relationship between what they say and what the truth is.
I actually found his contact details and I emailed him and I said, just so you know, your omnipresent thing is really annoying. And I wish I could get rid of these ads, but it's actually having the opposite effect. I will never do business with you.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Because of this.
You're literally the guard outside the labyrinth who always tells lies. Pack it in.
Yeah, didn't get a response.
I was going to say, did he respond? Genuinely curious.
No. The other thing that I've noticed recently is I don't know what PMP training is, but there's a lot of people on LinkedIn who believe I need it.
What? What's a PMP or some
I think
PMP?
it's like I think it's like a project management thing. Like it's like a certification. But my LinkedIn on messages, it's got like they've added like a focused and an other view. The view which is like spammy one. It's just absolutely crammed full of this PMP training. If I look at this, I can see like when I open it up, I can see like 1, 2, 3, 4, loads.
1, 2, 3, 4 loads.
Yeah.
Man,
I can see.
I got out of Wolverhampton.
I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the same day.
That seems like a lot. Okay,
that does seem like a lot.
So, corralling this in slightly, do you think, brief summary, do you think that the group of people who ads were working for and the group of people who they're working for today, do you think that's changed? Or do you think it only ever worked for the people it still works for now, and all the people who were trying it, it didn't work for Reddit before and it's still not working for Reddit, perhaps? Or,
no, I mean, I think.
Or maybe
are
it
you
is.
Talking
clarification? Do you mean the people who are?
Yeah,
do you mean people who are running the ads or people who are seeing the ads? Yeah.
Well,
or the platforms that are showing the ads.
That's actually a really good division. I'm interested in both answers.
All right, go ahead, Jeremy. You know the answer to this question.
It's clear that the people that are advertising have been very impacted by ATT and related efforts, especially smaller businesses. Like smaller businesses are clearly the most impacted by these changes and are not able to reach the people that they were able to reach before. And some companies have been very clear they're going out of business as a result. Again, I think on the platform side, yes, they're definitely impacted, but in many cases, it's not an ads problem. It's a business model problem.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Jono?
I would say largely the same thing. I don't think anything's dramatically changed with advertising. But I think people having to find new ways of doing it. I mean, I looked it up when we started this conversation, like the platforms in 2022 brought in something like $800 billion of revenue in advertising. Like an insane amount of money. So advertising clearly is something that is profitable and works and people want it. But I do think, I think the dynamics of it are going to change. And especially, I would say, especially with social media platforms. Like I think some of the things I suspect some of the things that we may see in Twitter will actually start coming into some of these other platforms. If they're positively received, right?
Yeah. So. I do think there is to your point, and we should be explicit about, there's a big difference between the social media platforms advertising and other types of advertisement where the signal is much clearer and it's not user generated content. When you're relying on massive amounts of user generated content, the dynamics of ads are definitely different than the New York Times or Amazon.
No, that's fair. And that I think is interesting. So the impression I have, and you've convinced me reasonably, is that what I'm seeing is not as much of a step change as I necessarily thought it was. So certainly I'd agree that the idea of, what I'll do is I'll put up a website, right? I'll get other people to type stuff into it for free. I'll run ads next to the stuff they type in. I'll make $1 billion. Seems to, for a little while, it was kind of, this is how you do money on the internet, and that has kind of gone away.
I think a lot of that was zero interest rates and just the general mentality of the time. Reddit's a great example, right? They've been bought multiple times. They've bounced back and forth. And I think the entire time, part of the mentality was they have a boatload of users. Surely there's a way to monetize this. Money's cheap. We'll figure it out. And now that money's not cheap, it's not we'll figure it out. It's either we figure it out now or there will be a change. And this is probably another show, but genuinely curious to see what happens to Reddit, because if they get it wrong, for those of us that have been on the internet for a hot minute, Reddit really exists to the extent and depth that it does because Dig messed up, right?
Yes.
Dig's mistakes were why Reddit was able to grow. Is there a next Reddit? I don't know. I don't know that there's another site right now waiting in the wings in the way that Reddit was.
No.
But if they get it wrong, I think it's probably existential for them.
Yeah.
Or they're just a much smaller site.
If they get it wrong, they're Freenode.
Sure, that's a good
crash and burn.
They'll still exist, but yes, they will not be. Yeah. But I mean, will they IPO now? It seems.
Well, not if Spence keeps saying, it'll just blow over. Don't worry about it. And all the moderators are like, you know what? Fuck you and your money. See you later, Bill and Ted.
I think part of the challenge that I mean, this is a whole, frankly, it could be a separate show. Part of the challenge that I think many of these like very Silicon Valley companies where it's like, we just need to scale, like just put something online that's vaguely useful and get millions of people using it. Part of the problem with that is that I think in many cases when companies go that way, their commercial offerings are tepid at best because they've already created a social contract with their audience where they expect it to be free.
Yes.
So like if you look at Twitter Blue is a classic example of that. Before Musk came in and changed everything, like it was just probably the least interesting product you could ever consider buying on the planet, right? So non-useful and not worth the money. And Reddit coins? Like, who cares?
Because, I mean, so I think Jeremy's point about, what we'll do is we'll just get loads and loads of people and then money will just start crystallizing out of the air near them. It's not really, it's not how it works. The point is now, if you float that as an idea, people laugh at you rather than going, okay, here's a bunch of investment. Because people
they certainly don't give
work.
you $410 million on a $9.6 billion pre-money valuation.
Yeah. The one thing I do want to say, though, going back to the advertising thing, which is kind of not specifically about this, but related. One thing I do think as a prediction is going to happen is these little businesses where people set up a Substack or a Patreon, and they're primarily content creators, whether it's video or whatever. I'm going to put video to one side and mainly focus on people who are creating written content.
Yep.
I think those businesses are going to really struggle in the next couple of years. And the reason why is because of AI. I think we're going to see loads of people who are going to see an opportunity to make a quick buck on this by using AI to generate a lot of fairly shitty content. So there'll be a lot of noise in the market. And I think what will happen is people will go and be wooed by a great piece of content, pay for Substack or whatever, and just get a lot of shit, and then I think the churn will be high. So I think what will happen is, and then also with the added challenge of just people generally don't tend to want to pay for content on the internet. But then I think what's going to happen is the whole creator world, like we've seen in the last 5 or 6 years, this whole creator economy, which I think is really cool, I think is going to start innovating, and people will start coming up with new ideas to make money, whether it's training or coaching or events or whatever. I think it will less become like what you said, Akaba, about, I'll write articles and that's how I make money on the internet, and because I'll run ads or whatever. And it will instead be people will create all kinds of different content that will be interesting to their target audience. So I think VR Flight Sim guy will not just be creating YouTube videos. He might organize a little event in London, or because he's British, or he might have branded merchandise, or he might have a coaching program for virtual pilots or whatever. I think that's where it's going to go.
So I very much agree with the latter part of that, and that people are going to have to get more creative and be multimodal, as it's called. But I do think the people generating truly insightful, interesting, especially in niche markets like financial markets or tech or other areas, who are writing truly excellent content will actually make more just charging for their writing, because in a sea of endless content, knowledge will be more valuable, not less valuable.
Yeah, I was talking more about like the median, I guess. But I agree. Like, if you're really good at what you do, you're going to do well, right?
I see. I hope Jeremy is right. I mean, Jono, maybe you're right, but I'm not necessarily sure. I think that the world is better where the thing that you're good at painting, or you're good at writing, or you're good at journalism. You should be able to, we should have a world where you can do that and people pay you for it. You don't have to be multimodal and set up an event and sell a line of t-shirts, right?
But we should have a world where poverty doesn't exist.
Agree.
We don't have that world.
Let's work for that too. Good idea.
But I don't see it as you not being an artist. I see it as you are an artist, but figure out the ways in which the people who want to consume the things you want to do will pay for that consumption.
Exactly.
So much like the music industry changed, and while if you were a musician in the 50s, you made most of your money a certain way, now you make it touring and selling merch and other things that aren't just the distribution of your music, because that's the way that industry went. It's not that you shouldn't be able to be paid to be an artist. It's that
it's adding value
the
to your
fundamentals
audience.
have changed. Yeah.
The music industry is interesting. I don't want to kick off a whole new discussion here because we're basically at the end. But the music industry had two things that journalism and art and things sort of does and sort of doesn't have. You're going to say they do have these things, and they do sort of, but they have record labels and the inkies, right? A whole review infrastructure, which art doesn't have unless you're one of the 19 most famous painters on earth or you're in New York or whatever. there aren't, even, I'm not talking about high end art criticism. I'm talking about people writing review blogs of cool art they've seen. Doesn't happen anywhere near as much as cool music they've seen, for example. And the second thing is record labels, people whose job it is to go out and find small time creators who they think could be bigger. That sort of, it's not venture capital, but you know what I mean? That kind of find people.
It's kind of a form of it if you think about it, though, isn't it?
It's the same as football scouts or whatever.
Yeah.
Art doesn't really have that. Journalism sort of does have that, but it's less we're going to go out and find people who are doing good writing and give them a job. It's more they're expected to go and apply for a job at the Rochester Herald and then eventually end up at the Guardian or the NYT or whatever.
Yeah.
There's less of the scouting, go out and find good people and model, and more it's their job to strive harder to get what they're doing in front of people. I actually think
this is going to be a good thing, because I think what happens is you have fewer centers of power, right? I think a world without record labels or the top 5 media companies,
the
whatever.
Disintermediation.
Yeah, is generally good. But I think what it does is it places a responsibility / burden on the individual creator and you might hate me from using this terminology, but I think it maps that they've basically got to find product market fit for their content. To Jeremy's point, like I could go and if I'm a great writer, I could go and create content because my medium for sharing my insight is writing. Right? Because that's what I've always done because I've been a journalist or whatever. But if your market wants your insight in a different format, whether it's going to be email or little bite-sized snippets of audio or whatever, every company that builds a product has to go through that process of figuring out product market fit to figure out what the market wants from them. And I actually think that's an area where creators aren't really well supported because I don't think it's intuitive to most creators.
No, and it's hard work and not at all what they're interested in doing. I mean, we've all been freelancers. How much of the experience of going out and finding work did you enjoy as opposed to actually doing it?
Right. and the tricky thing as well is that it's
the same thing. Yes, I agree with your point, John, to some extent, in that you can't just be a painter in your attic and expect a duck to fly in the window and buy the paintings. You have to do some marketing, right? But it's still annoying and rubbish with what you want to be as a painter.
Well, I think it depends on the person, because I think some people enjoy experimentation and trying new things. I think some people don't. But the biggest concern I have with the whole product market fit approach to creators is if you are like brand new and you kick off your Patreon, and you bring in $15, you're like, well, that's not going to get me very far. You don't have the luxury. Product market fit is a luxury that companies have when they can invest the money in figuring out what that is. If you're a creator and you are living on the breadline, the analogy here will be it's like a stand-up comic going out and doing spots every night.
Yeah.
So they can get an hour's worth of material and then have a special. Yeah.
Yep. But I mean, even in the medieval ages, you painted what your patron wanted, not what you wanted to paint. That's how it's always worked.
Yeah, I mean, I do see the point, but yeah.
On that bombshell, we think we are all looking forward to The World is Shaped Like a Crisp by Stuart Langridge.
Painted in watercolor and gouache.
All righty. Well, I think there's a lot we would like to hear from our community on with this one.
We would.
Yeah, definitely like general thoughts on advertising. The question earlier on about like, do you get good ads on Instagram?
Yeah.
For those of us who use Instagram.
I'm interested to hear from people who actually use Instagram in a proper way. Do you agree with Jono on this? Are the ads good there? They're not. I can certainly tell you the ones on YouTube are not, from my point of view, and you'd think it would pick up on it, and it hasn't. So,
yeah. You know why I think that might be? Is because I think I don't know about you guys, but when I use YouTube, one day I might be learning about a particular topic. The other day I might be like watching a Seinfeld clip. Another day I might be we use it in such different ways.
Sure.
I think that's maybe part of the reason why you get such a variation of shit on YouTube.
I promise you, I'm never using it to look at any of the stuff the ads are about.
Yeah, that's fair.
If I was like today I'm watching about someone binding a book and it's showing me ads about Dungeons and Dragons, I'd be like, it's not really what I'm doing today, but fine, no worries, right? But no, that's not what it is.
It sounds like you really need to invest in the stock market based upon the ads you're seeing.
Apparently. It's very, very infuriating. Right, okay. Thank you very much, everybody.
Peace out.